Hello and welcome to a new video. Today I just wanted to do something casual, something fun, and sort of explore my book collection with you. I was thinking about doing a full bookshelf tour because people have been asking for that, but I don't know how to make that in a way that does not make it excruciatingly boring. Because how do you do a bookshelf tour without just showing the shelves like book by book? Like for me, that feels really boring, but if you guys want that, let me know. But for now, I thought it would be fun to do an oddly specific book recommendation video because I love watching those and I love recommending people books. Like I would be such a good bookseller. I would write these little recommendation notes on the books and just talk to people all day long about the kind of book they need. I would be so good at that. But since I am not a bookseller, I will do it here and recommend some books to you. So I asked you guys on Instagram what kind of vibes, ideas, atmosphere, themes you wanted book recommendations for. And I got a huge list of requests, actually huge. So let's see how many we can get to. And I'm just gonna go through them, pick some random ones and recommend you a book. So let's get into it. First one I'm seeing here is books where girls turn into monsters or creatures. And I immediately had to think of one specific book for that. That is Salt Slow by Julia Armfield. This is a short story collection with horror stories about girlhood, what it means to be a woman, growing up, all that kind of stuff. And in the first story, it is about a girl who actually turns into a praying mantis, which was so well done. As soon as I read that story, I was like, I'm gonna love this collection, and I did. Julia Armfield is actually one of my favorite authors now, and this was the first book I read by her, so I highly recommend. And I also think it fits the prompt really well. A dark fantasy fable with beautiful writing. I also have a good book for that. Where is it? Oh, it's all the way here. I need a letter for my bookshelf ASAP. Anyway, for that one, I would recommend The Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Marillier. I think that's French, so hopefully I pronounced that right. This is a retelling of the fairy tale The Wild Swans by Hans Christian Andersen, if I'm correct. Which is a fairy tale about a girl who has to rescue her brothers from like a curse of the evil queen in which she turned them into swans. This is a retelling of that, but it is very dark. I mean, original fairy tales are also dark, but this one definitely was as well. Mostly because this has some really graphic sexual assault scenes, and I was not prepared for that when I got into this. I didn't know these scenes were in there, so they really shocked me. Like they were very graphic and I felt terrible after that. So whenever I recommend this book, because it is very good, I always warn people for that. There are some trigger warnings that you have to look up. But the writing in this is absolutely stunning. It's very poetic, very lyric. It's very dreamy. Like it takes place in this magical kingdom and a lot of it takes place in the forest, and there's a lot of talk about the connection with nature and like the spirits in nature. And I thought that was very, very beautifully done. And I think it perfectly fits the description of like a dark fairy tale with beautiful writing. I have another one that says modern vampirism. Is that how I say it? Vampirism? That feels wrong. But I do have a recommendation for that. And it is Thirst by Marina Yushuk. Hopefully I said it right. This is a book about a woman who gets turned into a vampire like really long ago, but you follow her up until the modern time. And there's also a second storyline that takes place in the present. So it is modern vampirism, but she does get turned like in the past. But you follow her life up until now, and she starts as this really bloodthirsty, unfeeling vampire, but she gets more and more like feeling and melancholic as she goes. So she really starts thinking about why she's here, what her purpose is. And then she meets the other character from the other perspective, and it turns into like a sapphic love story situation. And this one, like if you're really looking for a vampire book with lots of supernatural elements, I don't think this one is for you. It's more like literary. It's much more about grief and letting go and family and finding your place in the world. So it's like a different take on vampire books, and I really, really enjoyed that. Christmas books that are not romance or cheesy, maybe not even short stories. Okay, that last part I'm going to ignore because I am going to recommend a short story collection, but I do have a perfect non-cheesy Christmas book. It is Christmas Days by Janet Winterson. If you know Janet Winterson, she's an amazing literary author. Her books are so like experimental and genuinely unlike anything I've ever read. And she has a short story collection with Christmas stories. So if you want to read different type of Christmas stories where romance is not the focus, it's not cheesy, It's not like happily ever after, but they're a bit weird, a little bit creepy sometimes. There's some magical realist elements in some of them. Then I highly recommend this one. This was such a fun read that still got me in the Christmas spirit. So it did what it needed to do, but it was also like, it made you think a little bit more than the average cheesy Christmas romance. A story that takes place at or on the sea. For this, I also have a really good recommendation that I have to find. Here it is. I'm still not fully used to my new bookshelf and the way I organize them, so it takes me a while to find all the books. But for a story that takes place at the sea, not on the sea, but at the sea, I would recommend The Offing by Benjamin Myers. I read this summer because I was on like a sort of reading sprint of reading books that take place in nature, and this one was amazing. This is a 5-star book for me. One of my favorites of all time, and it's also one of those books that I want to reread very often because it had such beautiful language and just so many beautiful insights that I just want to come back to it every now and then. This story is about a young guy called Robert, and he just graduated. He has to start working in his family business. This is right after World War II, I think. But because he doesn't really feel ready for that, he just decides to start walking. Like, he lives in the UK and he decides to just start walking north. And he does that, but at some point he comes across this cottage at the sea, and there he befriends the old woman that lives in the cottage. And every day he's like, today I'm going to leave, I'm going to move on, I'm going to keep walking, I need to see more places. But yet something keeps him there, and they develop this really beautiful bond in which she sort of teaches him how to enjoy the small luxuries of life, like good food, nature, wine, gardening, stuff like that. And it's just so simple, but so gorgeous. I think it's a really good summer book, so maybe not for now, but if you're interested in reading this, save it for the summer, because it has that perfect languid, slow vibe that I always want to read in summer. Slytherin Common Room Past Midnight. I think there's only one book we can recommend for this. Actually, maybe now 2. I'll get 2. So with Slytherin Common Room, I just sort of imagine those dark, supernatural party vibes. Like this really dark party where everyone seems on drugs, but it's actually something more supernatural going on. If you go into a dark corner, you might be attacked by a vampire, who knows? Like, that is the energy I feel with this prompt. And for that, I want to recommend Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I feel like this book is quite well known, so that's why I also have another one. But this is like the perfect example of a supernatural dark academia book. I always forget names. Okay, this is about Alex. Alex has a supernatural ability, and that is the ability to see ghosts, or greys as she calls them. And because of this ability, she is hired by Yale University to keep an eye on their supernatural secret societies. These are secret societies that dabble in like the occult, and someone needs to keep them in check, and that is her job. And I devoured this book. I actually read it like 3 times by now, I think, because I just enjoyed it so much. It really feels like a grown-up version of like Harry Potter and other supernatural academy stories. The second book is not as good as the first one in my opinion, so I hope the third one that is not out yet will sort of make up for that, but we'll see. But I really, really enjoyed this. And then I also recently read An Academy for Liars by Alexis Henderson, and I just want to recommend this too because I feel like Ninth House is pretty popular. And this one gave me the same vibes as Ninth House did, the same energy. It also takes place at a supernatural academy, but it's quite gritty, quite dark. There's a lot of partying going on, a lot of alcohol, a lot of drugs. So I feel like for Slytherin Common Room after midnight, that is kind of the energy we're looking for here. So this one might be a good one too. Something with the same vibes as old Barbie movies. Oh my god, this one actually might make me cry. Like, I will forever be chasing that high of watching a Barbie movie with my younger sister on the couch. That was just so magical, and it started my love for like the classical arts, like ballet, classical music, like all of that I owe to the Barbie movies. I will never say one bad word about the Barbie movies. And I feel like it's almost impossible to take that feeling, that energy, and put it into a book. But I do have one book that sort of feels the same. That book is The Sugar Queen by Sarah Addison Allen. First of all, the cover already sort of gives that energy for me. This is like the perfect cozy wintry book. This is about Josie, who lives in like a ski town in the south of the US. But she is definitely not a Southern belle. Like, her mother was the ultimate Southern belle, but Josie is definitely not, and she struggles a little bit with that. And then one day she finds someone in her closet who may or may not be a fairy godmother. This was just very wholesome. I wouldn't say it was like an amazing book with really good writing, But if you're just looking for a cozy, warm, wintry book that is original and not like other like classic romances, then I would really recommend this. And a lot of the atmosphere just reminded me of the Nutcracker in Barbie, so I think for that it is a good rec for this prompt. I have 2 requests that I can recommend the same book for, and that is morally grey literary fiction and books that haunt you after reading them. I have the perfect book. I talk about this book all the time, so if I already did and you saw that, I'm sorry, but it is These Violent Delights by Mika Nemerever. Whenever someone asks for like a dark academia book, something that feels like The Secret History, something with toxic friendships or relationships, and something with morally grey characters where sort of obsession comes into play, I recommend this. I think I already mentioned this in my last video, so I'll keep it short, but it's about 2 guys in university who meet. They get into a relationship together, but they are both quite troubled and have like a lot of hurt in their past, and they sort of start projecting that onto each other, so they become very mutually dependent. And also they both have an interest in the dark side of human nature, and they sort of start exploring that up until they commit a very large crime. So hopefully that's enough for you to know that this book will haunt you till the end of your days. Especially the language of this book. There's one quote in this book that is one of my favorite quotes of all time. And it goes, I don't know the exact quote, but it goes something like this. They were both sunflowers who each believed the other one was the sun. Like, in the context of the story, that is actually mind-blowing. So this, everyone needs to read this. I will never stop recommending this book. I'm now seeing a request for a queer vampire, so the book I showed earlier, Thirst, is also very good for that because it's sapphic. I want to race through a book and experience the same joy that I did as a child. For me, the only type of book that can do that is fantasy. If I become completely immersed in a fantasy, I feel the same joy that I did as a child while reading. So let me recommend you a fantasy book. I actually decided to go with a cozy fantasy to make it even more childhood vibes. And this is Between by L.L. Starling. It is actually huge, but I flew through this book and it just gave me so much joy. It's so funny, it's so wholesome. This is about Sasha, who takes a teaching job in a very small, remote town. But when she comes there, she notices something strange is going on in that town, though she doesn't know exactly what. But one of the signs that point to that is that she suddenly starts dreaming, even though she has never dreamed in her entire life. And as soon as she steps within this town, she has dreams. And then one day, a man appears in her dreams and things sort of go from there. I don't want to spoil too much, but this book is hilarious, heartwarming, just such a joy, very like innocent, childlike, happy read that I could not get enough of. There are a lot of requests for books that make you feel in tune with nature, connecting to Mother Earth. A book that makes me feel spiritually in tune with the earth, realizing how small you are in the greatness of nature to be in awe of the eternal beauty. There's a lot of requests like that. And there's only one book that is the perfect recommendation for that. Let me get it. Where is it though? That book is Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. This is just a goldmine of indigenous and ancient wisdom when it comes to how we are supposed to interact with nature, how we should care for it, and how it cares for us. Like in this book, you really realize that we are just as much part of nature as ants are, or the birds, or dogs. And we pretend we're not a part of it at all, and we pretend we don't have to give back, like we're not part of the cycle of life in which everything takes and everything gives. This book really opens your eyes to some beautiful things. I haven't finished it yet because it's just one of those books that takes me a while to read. I want to savor it. I want to read it when I feel like it's time to read it. But the parts that I did read, I already cried so many times because you just feel so much sadness and guilt for what we've lost and sort of this deep longing to go to how it's supposed to be. So prepare to be emotional when reading this, but also prepare to be awed by the beautiful world we live in. Sad Girl Yearning, but 300 years ago. Okay, for that I would recommend The God of Endings by Jacqueline Holland. This is another vampire book actually. This is also about a girl who gets turned into a vampire a very long time ago. I don't remember exactly when. But you follow her throughout her entire life and also up until now, where she is an art teacher for young kids. And she's trying to be normal, have a normal life. But she also notices that her hunger is getting stronger. She has like a vegetarian diet, but more and more she keeps waking up in the middle of the night where she has slaughtered like entire cows and stuff. So she becomes very scared of her own capabilities as a predator. And there's just a lot of like philosophical pondering, a lot of yearning for connection, for being seen, for living a normal life. And I thought it was really beautifully done. I also really enjoyed the historical aspect of this because you sort of move through time with her. And yeah, that was just really well done and I really enjoyed it. Let's stay in the women tropes. And someone asked here, feral women seeking adventure and companions. And I actually have such a perfect recommendation for this. It's uncanny. That is Spoiled Creatures by Amy Twigg. This is basically about an all-female cult, like it's in modern times. And it's about a girl who joins this cult of women who refuse to live adjusted to society's standards, who refuse to interact with men, and they just want to live off the land and have a grand old time. But of course, it's never as utopian as it sounds, so some stuff is going to happen there. But definitely about feral women seeking companionship and adventure, because that is exactly what this book is about. Cozy Ghibli in the Forest. I love this request because this is exactly the vibe I am always looking for, and I do have a recommendation. Okay, I actually have two because I couldn't choose. The first one is The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle. This is about a unicorn who overhears two people talking, saying that unicorns have died out. And she's like, what the hell? But I'm still here. Does that mean I'm the last one? And she sets out on this journey to find other unicorns. And during this journey, she meets a wizard who actually cannot do magic. And he joins her on this journey and it turns into an unlikely friendship. And there's actually someone else who joins as well, but I just forgot who that is, which is kind of stupid. But yeah, there's like 3 companions journeying the forest together to find unicorns. This is another one of those heartwarming books where it's really about friendship, finding your place in the world, finding your unique strengths. And yeah, I love this book. And as soon as I finished this, I posted on my Instagram story saying like, oh my god, this should be an animation, like a Ghibli animation. And then I got so many replies saying that it actually is turned into an animation already by the guy, I forgot his name, but by the guy who later started Studio Ghibli. So that is really cool. And I still have to watch that. It looked absolutely beautiful. So I'm definitely going to watch that sometime. But I would say that's the perfect recommendation for Ghibli vibes in the forest. Another one that gave me that a little bit, but if you want something a little darker, then I would recommend Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher. This is also about a group of unlikely companions journeying through the forest on a quest. The main character wants to save her sister, who is married to like an evil, abusive king or prince. And she asks a witch for help. And the witch is going to help her, but she also has to complete assignments for her. And this was just another lovely case of found family. And probably my favorite part of this book is that there was a dog made of bones and a demonic chicken. And that's all you need to know to understand why this has Ghibli vibes. A book about a special and long-lasting friendship. What else can we recommend for that but Elena Ferrante's My Brilliant Friend? It's a super popular literary fiction series about a friendship between 2 girls as they grow into adulthood. I still have to read the rest of the series, but this book is so raw and real and vulnerable when it comes to talking about girlhood. As far as I know, it is an autobiography, so it makes sense that it feels so real and relatable. But yeah, the way this author talks about all the little thoughts we have when we're young girls, like the fits of jealousy we feel for our friends, the desire to be seen, to be wanted by men, like all the stuff as we get older we're a little bit ashamed of and never really talk about. This author talks about them and it is just brilliant. I don't know what else to say about it, so I cannot wait to read the rest of the series. But I do know from the prologue of this book that this is about a long-lasting friendship and that the women still know each other when they're old. So it does fit the prompt perfectly. Another request is Pagan Women Culty Countryside. Again, Spoiled Creatures is perfect for that, absolutely perfect. So check that one out. There's so many good prompts and I cannot do them all, oh my god. A book with the main character going through an exploration of their own body. For that, I would recommend the Book of Acts by Sarah Rose Etter. This is a magical realist book. It's about a girl who gets born with her stomach twisted into a knot, and her mother has this as well. And you sort of just follow her life from girlhood into adulthood. It's very weird. It's very strange. Like, often I had no idea what was going on, but it was also so sad, so dark. You just felt for the main character so much, and the whole pain of being a girl, of course, is portrayed in this book. There's a lot of trigger warnings for this one, but if you want to read a book about exploration of the body, I think this is a really good one, because it really talks about the body in connection to the mind and the traumas we carry. It just stays on your mind a long time because it's so strange and so sad. There's one here saying cheating husbands and suffering wives. I hope this is not from personal experience. If it is, I am really sorry. But I do have a very good recommendation. Like, what other book can I recommend for this theme but The Woman Destroyed by Simone de Beauvoir? And this is a short story collection of 3 stories, if I'm correct. And one of the stories is called The Woman Destroyed, and it's about a wife finding out that her husband is cheating, and he just sort of tells her he doesn't want to stop. Like, he's going to keep seeing this other woman, and she just has to deal with that. And you are in the mind of the wife and going through all the despair with her, all the frustration, all the jealousy, all the self-hatred, all of that. And the emotions feel so real that that story is actually suffocating. Like, if I would read this now and look at my boyfriend, I would get a little angry at him just from all the emotions I'm feeling from that story. So I think this is the perfect example of what wives go through when their husband cheats. Walking through the eerie, misty moors, not a Bronte. I got you. For that, I would recommend Fain by Anne-Marie MacDonald. You can already see it on the cover. There is some misty, eerie moors going on here. The story is completely different from like Wuthering Heights or something, so don't expect like a tortured romance. This is about a young girl who grows up between the border of Scotland and England with her dad. Her mother has passed away, but no one really talks about her. She's not sure what happened there. It's very mysterious, and her dad only is awake at night. He's like nocturnal, he sleeps during the day, and he is awake at night. So she only gets to see him in the late evening before she goes to bed. And I realized this makes it all sound very gothic, and it definitely is. It has perfect gothic vibes. But the main theme of this book is gender and knowing who you are. And I realized that now that you heard it, you're like, how does that have to do with anything? But I literally cannot tell you without spoiling something very important, so I'm not going to tell you. But if you're interested in the topic of gender, gender identity, and like fighting for who you are in combination with gothic atmosphere, definitely read this. It was so good. It's a big boy, but it was 100% worth it for me. It was so original, unlike anything I've ever read. It kept me on my toes till the very end. There's like some plot twists, and it was just amazing. So yeah. Chunky and immersive historical fiction family saga that is not centered around a white family. I feel like the answer for this is so obvious that I'm a little suspicious that maybe they were like trying to get to this book, but I'm gonna recommend it anyway. That book is Pachinko by Min-Jin Lee. It's been a while since I read this, as I read it when it first came out, so that's definitely been a few years. I just remember that it's really, really good, and it's about a Korean family that moves to Japan, and you follow them from like the 1900s. You follow them from the 1900s. So this family moves to Japan, and they are not wanted there because there's like tension between Korea and Japan. I think there was even a war going on at the time. Not 100% sure. But yeah, you just follow the family through multiple generations as they try to make a place for themselves in a country that does not really want them. And it was beautiful, it was heartbreaking, as every family saga is. And I think it fits the description really well. Books that feel like Just Kids by Patti Smith. I was on a search for books like Just Kids for a while, and someone on Instagram recommended me a book back then. And it was actually perfect. It is this book. It's called Clothes, 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 Music, 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 Boys, Boys, Boys by Viv Albertine. And yes, that is the actual title. This is the memoir of Viv Albertine, who was in the first all-girl punk band, The Slits. And this is just about her time in the music scene in London. Before that, during, but also after, when she grows into adulthood. I had so much fun reading this. It was so funny, but also very sad and raw at some times. She really just says it how it is, and I love that. One of my favorite like little details of this book was how she was so close to Vivienne Westwood. Like she started buying clothes at Vivienne Westwood's store Saks when she was not like a worldwide famous designer yet, but she just had her punk store in London. And oh my god, I love reading about those parts. But in general, the whole of this book is really good, really interesting. And Viv Albertine is just really, really cool, like Patti Smith is. So I think this is a good book to read if you are chasing that high that Just Kids gave you. A beautifully heart-wrenching story that is similar to Normal People. And it says but Little Life, so maybe you're trying to say not as sad as Little Life, or you wanted to say and Little Life. I don't know, but I'm going to give you a beautiful heart-wrenching story. That story is The End of Loneliness by Benedict Wells. This is about a young boy, Jules, and his parents die tragically in a car accident, and he and his sister and brother get sent to a boarding school. And there he just sort of grows apart from his siblings. He feels really lonely, and he makes a friend there who turns out to be someone very important for the rest of his life. And there's some romance in here, but it's mostly about family and grief and finding your way back to each other after grief. And yeah, not gonna lie, this one will break you, so I hope you're ready for that. But it's not as sad as A Little Life, as in the sadness and the trauma are not as overdone as it is in Little Life. So I hope it's a good recommendation. Paris, rain, idle vibe, drinking coffee, and talking about life. Okay, so I mentioned in an earlier video, I think as well, that I have a huge stack of books about Paris in the 1920s, 1930s on the left bank, like the height of the artistic bohemian life in Paris. I am obsessed with that time and place. So I have many recommendations for this, but I'm just thinking which one would be the best if it's just about like drinking coffee, hanging out and being idle. I would say it's probably Ernest Hemingway's A Movable Feast. Let me get it. This is the book everyone always recommends when we're talking about the artistic Paris in like the 1920s. Ernest Hemingway lived there in that time when there was a lot of famous authors living in Paris. And he just describes his time there. He was just hanging out at bars, talking to other famous authors, and hanging out at Shakespeare and Company, which is the most amazing bookstore in Paris with amazing history. So if you're into that, definitely look that up because there's a lot of books about it as well. But yeah, if you are looking for like philosophical conversations in a rainy cafe in Paris, A Movable Feast is the book, like the book. A book that encapsulates February. Okay, for me, February is just a really bleak month, sort of like November, but in November you have something to look forward to, which is Christmas. And February is just there. It's dark, it's cold, it's gray, and there's just not much going on because you know March will be shitty too, so there's not much to look forward to either. And really that coldness and bleakness, there is one book that perfectly matches that. And that is Burial Rites by Hannah Kent. I read this a very long time ago. I really want to reread it soon, but this was really good and really original. This book takes place in Iceland in 1829, and this is the year that the very last death sentence was carried out in Iceland. Like after this, it became illegal to order a death sentence, but someone had to be the last, and that was a woman called Agnes. And this is her story. Like you follow her up until the days of her death. And during those days, she stays with a family because with a death sentence, I think a family was like obligated to take in the convicted. So Agnes stays with this family, and of course they're like super wary of her. They don't really know what she's done. Obviously she's done something very bad, but slowly like Agnes and the family sort of grow closer. But yeah, the whole atmosphere of this book is it's cold, it's dark, it's gloomy, it's bleak, and of course it's also very sad because you know Agnes will die at the end. So if there is one book that screamed February to me, it is definitely this one. Okay, let's do the last one, and I think I'm going to go with Aquarius Moon because I am an Aquarius Moon, so I feel called to do this one. I just find it hard to recommend a book for that one because I feel like Aquarius moons are very sort of lost in this world, very nostalgic, very searching for purpose. They have like creative ambitions but don't really know how to put them out in the world. I feel like that's sort of the vibe Aquarius moon is giving off. And the one book that comes to mind for that is this one, Writers and Lovers by Lily King, but I just feel like this one is not weird and dreamy enough to fully give Aquarius Moon, if you know what I mean. But let's just go with this one for now. This is about a young woman called Casey, and her life is just sort of in shambles. Her relationship just ended, her mother passed away, and she just doesn't really know what to do with her life. And her one dream is becoming a writer, but she's been working on her novel for 6 years. She's 31 by now, and she's sort of lost faith that it will ever happen. That is the premise of this story. And I feel like that is very Aquarius Moon of her. But I'm gonna think if I have another good recommendation that gives more like the dreamy strangeness that comes with being an Aquarius Moon. Maybe Sirens and Muses by Antonia Ungres. This is also about wanting to make art and finding like your artistic identity, but it's a bit more chaotic and all over the place and a bit more like real life than Writers and Lovers is. So maybe Sirens and Muses is also a good recommendation for Aquarius Moon. Definitely about people trying to find their place in the world and chasing artistic greatness. I feel like that is what an Aquarius Moon is. Okay, I have no idea how many books I just recommended, but I feel like it was quite a few. So let's just end it here for now. If you want me to do a part 2, please tell me, because I have so many more that I could go through and so many more books I could recommend, as you could see. But for now, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you have any other recommendations for the prompts I mentioned, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!